The year was 1940. The world was on the edge of war. Europe was burning, tensions were rising, and though the United States hadn't yet entered the conflict, change hung thick in the air. Radios buzzed with reports of distant unrest. Families gathered around newspaper headlines and wondered what tomorrow would bring. And while those seismic global events unfolded, something small was happening, quietly, routinely, in the background of American life. The U.S. Mint was striking cents, billions of them, copper discs engraved with a man's solemn profile on one side and 2 wheat stalks on the other. The Lincoln wheat penny. Designed to honor one of America's greatest presidents, it had already become a familiar figure in American pockets. In 1940 alone, the Philadelphia Mint would produce over 586 million Lincoln cents. They were mass-produced, common. Or so it seemed, because hidden among those hundreds of millions were a few extraordinary survivors. Mistakes. Miracles. Coins that, today, are worth not just more than a cent, but thousands, sometimes even tens of thousands of dollars. To most, the 1940 penny is just a relic. Something lost in jars of change or buried in forgotten collections. But to those who know, to those who look closely, it's something else entirely. It's a story waiting to be told. A small piece of metal that could mean something life-changing. Start with the basics. The 1940 Lincoln wheat penny features the classic design by Victor David Brenner. Lincoln's stoic gaze faces right on the obverse, surrounded by the words, "In God We Trust, Liberty, and the Year." On the reverse, 2 wheat ears frame 1 cent and United States of America, topped by the Latin phrase E pluribus unum. Elegant. Simple. Familiar. But what makes some of these coins soar to $5,000, $14,400, and even $32,200? It's all in the details. Point one of the most prized attributes a coin can have is condition. The grading scale, from poor to mint state, separates junk from jewels. Most coins from 1940 saw heavy use, passed hand to hand during wartime rationing, tucked into soda machines, worn smooth over decades. But once in a while, a specimen surfaces that was never spent. Never touched. Preserved in a roll. Protected in a drawer. A 1940 Lincoln cent in MS 67 plus red condition, meaning bright, untouched copper with full original color, sold for an eye-watering $32,200 at auction. Just imagine, a single penny, untouched by time, suddenly worth more than a new car. Other examples, still blazing red but slightly lower in grade, fetched incredible prices as well. In 2021, an MS 67 red 1940 penny brought $14,400. Another, nearly flawless, sold for $9,000 the year before that. These aren't hypothetical numbers. These are real auctions. Real coins. And real people who struck gold in the most unexpected places. And then, there are the errors. Coins are supposed to be perfect. Uniform. Identical. But the reality of mass minting is messier than that. Sometimes dies crack. Sometimes coins are misaligned. And sometimes, incredible mistakes slip through unnoticed. In the case of the 1940 Lincoln cent, one of the most spectacular errors is the double die obverse. These are coins where the hubbing process misaligned, leading to duplicated images, ghostly, offset impressions especially visible in the word liberty or the date itself. One such error, crisp and well-preserved, sold for $6,500, stunning even veteran collectors. Another spectacular error? The off-center strike. Some 1940 pennies were struck with the blank planchet misaligned beneath the die, causing part of the design to be missing. These freaks of the minting process are bizarre and beautiful. One such coin, struck 15% off-center but still retaining sharp detail and full rims, brought $3,900 at auction. Then there's the ever-desirable repunched mint mark, a quirk mostly seen on the Denver and San Francisco issues. The D or S mint mark was hand-punched into the die, sometimes more than once, and if misaligned, it left a doubled impression. RPM coins from 1940 in top condition have crossed the $4,500 mark, especially when paired with full red luster and minimal blemishes. Even more rare are the coins struck on foreign planchets, accidents where blanks meant for other countries' coins were fed into the machines. A 1940 penny struck on a thinner, lightweight planchet from a Latin American mint sold for $7,800. Imagine spotting a coin that feels just a little too light, and discovering it's one of a kind, but beyond mint errors and flawless grades, there's something else that makes the 1940 penny special: its place in time. This was a coin minted in the calm before America entered World War II. It was spent during rationing, saved during hardship, and often given by soldiers to their sweethearts before shipping off to fight overseas. These coins passed through gas stations lit by neon, movie theaters screening Casablanca, and hardware stores selling victory bonds. Every scratch, every fade in color, every dent tells a story that transcends metal and minting. It speaks to American resilience. That's why collectors chase these coins. Not just for the value, but for the meaning. ATX Coins Hub, we've spoken to collectors who've built entire sets of Lincoln wheat cents just to relive history through their coins. And for some, the 1940 is their white whale. Take the story of Marvin, a retired machinist from Ohio. He'd been collecting pennies since he was 8 years old. At a coin show in 2019, he spotted a 1940 Lincoln cent glowing with color under the display lights. It was certified MS-67 red by PCGS. He hesitated, unsure. But something in his gut said, this is the one. He bought it. A year later, it sold at auction for $28,400. That single coin helped pay off his mortgage. Or consider the story of Alicia, a single mother in Florida. She inherited her grandfather's old penny albums. Inside was a 1940 cent with a misaligned strike. Just for fun, she sent it in for grading. It came back $58 Australian with an off-center error, and it sold online for $2,300. Enough to cover a semester of her daughter's tuition. These coins are not just about wealth. They're about wonder. Discovery. The possibility that something so small, so often ignored, could hold such power. If you're wondering how to begin the search, start small. Pull out your old jars of change. Look closely at every wheat cent. Especially those dated 1940. Examine the mint mark, the color, the rim. Is the design clean? The color still red? Is there doubling? A repunched mark? Strange edges or missing details? If anything looks off, even slightly, consider getting it appraised. You never know what you might be holding. The beauty of the Lincoln Wheat series is its approachability. Anyone can search for them. Anyone can collect. And anyone, yes anyone, can strike gold. The 1940 Lincoln Wheat penny is a time capsule. A piece of a world that no longer exists. And sometimes, it's worth far more than just a cent. Sometimes, it's worth thousands. Sometimes, it's worth changing your life. So don't walk past that penny. Don't leave it in the parking lot. Don't ignore it in the bottom of your drawer. Because every so often, one of those pennies turns out to be the one. The one that shocks the experts. The one that makes headlines. The one that tells a story and brings value far beyond its face. It's the smallest piece of American currency. A simple cent, light, unassuming, and often forgotten. We walk past them on sidewalks, we toss them into jars, we barely glance at them in change. But what if the penny in your hand wasn't just worth 1 cent? What if that little 1952 Lincoln Wheat penny, worn from time, coppered from age, held a secret? A secret that has turned similar coins into $9,000, $15,600, even $31,200 windfalls. Because sometimes, the most extraordinary treasures come in the humblest forms. The story begins in post-war America. The year is 1952. Dwight D. Eisenhower is elected president, the Cold War is at its peak, and coinage production is booming. Over at the Denver Mint, things are moving at full throttle. In that year alone, the Denver facility struck over 746 million Lincoln Wheat cents. On paper, the 1952 D was just another workhorse penny, minted to keep the economy moving. It was small, made of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, like every other cent of its era. But in practice, things were far from perfect. When you're striking 750 million coins, errors happen. Equipment wears down. Dies clash. Mint marks are punched by hand. The sheer scale of production leads to misalignments, striking issues, and material flaws. And that's where the real magic begins. The 1952 D Lincoln wheat penny doesn't seem rare, until you find one that breaks the mold. Let's talk about one such coin. A perfectly preserved 1952 D penny, radiant in original red copper color, certified by PCGS as MS67 red. That means it was in mint state, untouched by circulation, with no scratches, no wear, and glowing luster. It was so rare, so flawless, that collectors went wild for it. And when it finally went to auction, it sold $4,900. Then there's another story. A collector going through a wheat penny roll noticed something odd about a 1952 D. The mint mark looked doubled. Not quite clean. Not quite sharp. He took a closer look and realized he'd found a repunched mint mark, an RPM error where the D was punched twice, slightly off alignment. These kinds of errors weren't machine-made, they were human-made, done during the manual die creation process. And they're incredibly sought after. That particular penny, once graded and authenticated, brought in $4,500 at auction, thanks to its RPM and sharp condition, but the real shocker came a few years ago when a 1952 D cent surfaced in MS67 plus red, that tiny plus making all the difference. Coins at that level are so pristine, so brilliant, they look as if they left the mint yesterday. That coin sold for a stunning $31,200, setting a new bar for the series. Why? Because there are likely fewer than 5 coins known in that condition, and collectors know that once it's off the market, it may not reappear for a generation. Beyond high-grade examples, the 1952 D also birthed some fascinating mint errors. A double die reverse was discovered, where the wheat stalks and the words 1 cent showed doubling under magnification. That coin, found in near mint state condition, fetched $6,800. Another was struck off-center by 15%, with Lincoln's profile drifting to one side and the rim incomplete. That mistake turned a common penny into a $3,600 prize at auction. Even more fascinating was a coin mistakenly struck on a foreign planchet, thinner and lighter than a normal US cent. That unusual strike led to a mismatch in coloration and weight, but experts authenticated it as a legitimate US mint error. It sold privately for over $7,400, and remains one of the most bizarre 1952 D cents known, but not every story of the 1952 D is told in auction houses. Some begin in attics, in old coffee tins, in estate sales where bags of wheat pennies are sold for face value. That's how Lisa from Nevada found hers. Her grandfather left her his coin collection in a rusted old box, and she nearly sold the whole thing to a local dealer. But something told her to go through it first. Among the dozens of 1950s wheat cents was a gleaming, untouched 1952 D with sharp detail and flawless surface. She submitted it for grading and watched in awe as it came back MS66 red with full strike. That coin later sold for $5,600, which she used as a down payment on her first home. Or take the case of Eduardo, a janitor from Texas. During a night shift, he noticed an old wheat penny in the building's vending machine coin return. He kept it, curious. After some research and a little help from a local coin shop, he learned it was a 1952 D RPM in AU condition. It wasn't perfect, but it was rare. He sold it for $1,850, and he's been collecting ever since. These stories are powerful. Because they're real. They prove that a coin worth just 1 cent on paper can hold immense hidden value, value that increases every day as more coins are lost, corroded, or overlooked. And that brings us to the emotional core of collecting, hope. Every penny has potential. Every roll could be the one. But how do you know what to look for? First, always check for luster and surface quality. Red coins, those that retain their original copper glow, are exponentially more valuable than their brown-toned counterparts. Then, look for signs of errors. Use a 10x loop to examine the date and mint mark. Doubling? Repunching? Off-centering? These are red flags, in the best way possible. Weigh the coin if you can. Odd weight could signal a wrong planchet error. And if you suspect something unusual, don't guess. Submit it to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC. They can turn your suspicion into certification, and that into a payday. So what makes the 1952 D Lincoln wheat penny so compelling? It's not just its history, though that's rich. It's not just its design, though that's iconic. It's the fact that this coin, this everyday coin, can defy all expectations. That it can transform a handful of copper into thousands of dollars. That it can reward patience, curiosity, and a good eye. It's the possibility that one day, you'll be the one holding a penny worth $31,200, and you'll remember this very moment, when you learned it was possible. ATX Coins Hub, we believe in the thrill of the hunt. We believe that the smallest discoveries can bring the biggest rewards. And we believe that sometimes, when you take a closer look, even the most ordinary penny can be a piece of American treasure. So go ahead. Open that jar of change. Dig out that old wheat penny roll. And when you find a 1952 D, don't look past it. Look into it. Because behind that tiny copper coin, there might be a story. A legacy. And maybe, just maybe, a fortune waiting to be found. Imagine holding history in the palm of your hand, a small, copper coin no bigger than your thumbnail. It feels light. It looks worn. It's a penny. But what if that single coin, that 1954 D Lincoln wheat cent buried in a forgotten drawer or rattling inside an old coin jar, was hiding a secret? What if, instead of 1 cent, it was worth $9,000, or $24,000, or even over $94,000? The coin that most people pass by without a second thought might just be one of the most coveted treasures in American numismatics. The 1954 D Lincoln wheat penny is a coin that tells two stories. One is the story of its design, familiar, iconic, reassuring. And the other is the story of the few rare survivors, those extraordinary mint errors and pristine specimens that turned a pocket coin into a collector's fantasy. The story of the 1954 D wheat penny begins in Denver, at the U.S. Mint. That year, the Denver facility produced over 251 million Lincoln cents. That's right, more than 250 million of them were struck in the standard bronze composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. Most were flawless by design and quickly absorbed into commerce, never thought of again. But buried in that massive sea of minting were anomalies. Errors. Unintentional marvels created not through artistry, but through mechanical malfunction and sheer luck. These errors are the stuff of numismatic legends. At a glance, the 1954 D penny might seem unremarkable. It has the same bold portrait of President Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, sculpted by Victor David Brenner, whose initials, VDB, would become infamous in the collecting world. The reverse bears the signature wheat ears that framed the words, 1 cent, and United States of America. But for those who know what to look for, this coin becomes anything but ordinary. Let's talk about errors. The 1954 D has several. Some minor. Some dramatic. One of the most prized errors discovered among 1954 D Lincoln cents is the doubled die obverse. In this variety, a misalignment in the hubbing process created a ghostly, doubled appearance in key parts of the design, especially the date, the word liberty, and, in God we trust. This isn't just a fuzzy image. The doubling is bold and unmistakable. Collectors have paid as much as $24,600 for high-grade doubled die examples in MS66 red, with full mint luster and sharp detail. Then there's the famous repunched mint mark, or RPM. In the 1950s, mint marks were punched into the dies by hand, often more than once to make the impression clear. Sometimes, these punches didn't line up perfectly, leaving behind traces of a D mint mark punched over another D, slightly off-center, slightly misaligned. It may not sound like much, but to collectors, this tiny variance creates immense value. 1 RPM in brilliant uncirculated condition, MS65 red, sold at auction for $6,750, with fierce bidding among top-tier collectors. Another variety that sent waves through the community was the off-center strike, where the penny was not properly aligned during striking, leading to part of the design being missing, shifted, or distorted. One such 1954 D off-center penny, graded $58 Australian, sold for $3,400 at auction. Imagine, A coin that looked like a mistake turning out to be a gold mine for the right collector, but the real holy grails? Those are the 1954 D pennies in MS67 plus red condition, mint state coins with virtually no flaws, their red copper surface glowing as if they were struck yesterday. Only a microscopic percentage of coins survive in such condition. The majority of 1954 D cents were used in daily life, spent, rubbed, nicked, and scraped over time. But a few were preserved by collectors, untouched, stored in original rolls, shielded from air and fingers and time itself. One such example surfaced in 2021. It was encapsulated by PCGS and awarded a blazing MS67 plus red grade, near perfection. Its color, brilliance, and detail were so intense that it shocked seasoned dealers. At auction, it sold for $94,875. A single 1-cent coin sold for nearly $100,000, and if that doesn't send a chill down your spine, consider this: experts believe there may be only 1 or 2 examples left in the world that could grade MS68 red, and if one is ever found, it could easily shatter the 6-figure mark, possibly selling for $120,000 or more. But this story isn't just about auctions and high-end collectors. It's about you. It's about the thrill of discovery. Because these coins are still out there, tucked away in grandma's change purse, in dusty jars of pennies collected decades ago, in the bottom drawer of a forgotten desk. And it doesn't take a millionaire to find one. It takes curiosity, patience, a sharp eye, and a little bit of hope. Imagine the moment you find one. You're sifting through coins, bored or maybe just exploring. You come across a 1954 D Lincoln cent. It's got a strange shimmer. You notice the mint mark. Wait, is that repunched? Is that doubling on the date? You weigh it in your palm and wonder if this ordinary-looking piece of copper might be the key to something big. It's not fantasy. It happens all the time. A retired teacher in Oklahoma once submitted a coin she'd saved in a plastic medicine bottle for decades. It turned out to be a double-die 1954 D penny in MS65 red. It sold for $17,100, and she used the money to fund her granddaughter's education. A young coin roll hunter in Michigan opened a bank box of pennies and found a pristine 1954 D with full red luster, no nicks, and sharp strike. His find, later certified MS66 red, sold for $5,200, and launched him into a new career in numismatics. These aren't fairy tales. They're the reward of patience, curiosity, and the courage to look again. So how can you identify one of these rare 1954 D treasures? Start by checking the mint mark under a 10x loop. Look for signs of repunching, doubling, shadows, or misalignment. Then study the date and lettering closely for signs of doubling. Examine the color. Coins that still glow red like fresh copper are far more valuable than those that have turned brown with oxidation. Finally, assess the coin's surface. The fewer the nicks, spots, or blemishes, the higher the grade and the higher the price. And if you're lucky enough to find one that looks promising, don't guess. Submit it for professional grading through services like PCGS or NGC. Authentication is everything in the coin world, and a grade of MS66 or higher could mean the difference between a $5 coin and a $50,000 payday. ATX Coins Hub, we don't just look at coins, we uncover stories. Stories of lost value. Stories of history. Stories of people who discovered magic hiding in their junk drawers and spare change. The 1954 D Lincoln wheat penny might look ordinary. It might even feel forgettable. But take a second look. Because behind that little copper disc is a mystery, a legacy, and maybe, just maybe, a small fortune waiting to be found. So the next time you reach into your pocket and feel a familiar clink, take a moment to look closer. That humble penny might be worth more than you ever imagined. It might be the start of your own collecting journey. Or it might be your once-in-a-lifetime discovery, the coin that turns 1 cent into $94,000. All it takes is a second look.